Hello, Mr. O'Neill. Let's learn about World War II. Okay. Let me take you back to 1939, a magical time where not a lot of magic was happening. Hitler was busy blowing the minds of the other Europeans by his efficiency in taking what he wanted. He was taking land by blitzkrieg, or lightning war, which was when he took his troops and quickly moved ahead into the enemy at a breakneck pace. Their first move was to take Poland. German troops moved so quickly that Poland had surrendered within 4 weeks. The Germans and the Soviets decided to split Poland between them. The Germans chose to wait out the next coming winter to continue attacking. After the weather warmed up a bit, Hitler blitzkrieged Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and France. However, when they attacked the French, they had to break through their weak defense on the Belgian border because the French had the Maginot Line on the Germany-France border. In doing this, the Germans split the French army, pushing some of them north and some of them south. The troops pushed to the north, towards Dunkirk Beach, were totally screwed. That was until Mr. British Boat came in and saved tons of them. Hitler understood that Britain had water game and land game. So he asked, but do they have air game? So he started an air force, and the Germans took their fancy new planes and blew up tons of British military bases. It was pretty bad, and it could have been worse, but England is cool, and they had a fast and reliable defense system. The British got their crap together, and they took to the skies with their fancy new planes and blew up tons of Germans. At this point, Hitler has realized that Britain is in the war because they have the Soviet Union on their side, and he thinks that the Soviets are feeble, so he planned on attacking them. But in 1940, Mussolini's attack on Greece failed, which left Hitler's south flank exposed. Hitler had to quickly capture Yugoslavia and Greece to prevent anything bad from happening. A little later, in June of 1941, he did an attack on the Soviet Union, and the results were crazy. They captured Ukraine, and they almost had the capital under control. Sadly, their awesomeness streak was slowed when the winter came, which they were rather unprepared for. This allowed the Russians to take this time to fight back against the Germans, and their attack was successful. December 7th, 1941. A familiar name. Pearl Harbor. The Japanese attacked Hawaii, and this made the Americans really mad. Not only did they bomb us, but they started to take all the islands of the Pacific, making them their own. This effort was led by Hideki Tojo, and was done to intimidate the US and prevent them from entering the war. Unluckily for them, the plan backfired, and it actually encouraged the US to join. 4 days after Pearl Harbor, only 4 days, Hitler declared war on the United States of America. When the US entered, they spoke with the Soviet Union and Great Britain and said, "Who cares about our political differences? Let's just work together to deal with the war." At this time, the Germans broke into Egypt and also captured Crimea, and things were looking up for Hitler. That was until they fought Stalingrad, and the Soviets fought back. The Germans had their supplies cut off, and from there, they were surrounded. Hitler lost his best troops in this battle, and then it dawned on him. He couldn't beat the Russians. Meanwhile, further east, Japan tried to attack Australia, but the US saved them in time. About a month later, the US bombed 4 Japanese aircraft carriers, screwing up the Japanese Navy. The United States started to do this thing called island hopping, which is where they, you guessed it, hopped from island to island, ridding the Japanese of them. The war affected many everyday people's lives. In the Soviet Union, Leningrad was in siege for 900 days, and everyone there was starving. They even had to eat cats, dogs, and mice. Stalin had to move all of the people east because the Germans were coming from the west, and 55% of the national income started to be used for war equipment. Women had a big role, and they'd work in lots of mines and railroads. They even fought in the war as snipers. The US didn't have any fighting going on their land, so they worked as a supplier of weapons and artillery to the other allies. Tons of people, especially women, were moved around the country in order to work to meet the increasing standards of production. African Americans were moved from the south to the north, which caused lots of racial issues. Japanese Americans had it bad. They were moved to special camps that were heavily guarded due to the Japanese feud going on. In Britain, the people were getting bombed every night by the Germans. This caused many to send the kids to safer areas outside the common bomb spots. Some even sent their children to the US and Canada, where people are nice. For the Germans, when the war started, things were pretty nice. They were able to take the food from the countries they raided, and they didn't have to worry about it much. After the US joined, the country became very war-focused and things began to fall apart. The money was starting to become more and more focused on the war, rather than the people within Germany. Things were really tough at the end of the war, when so much of Germany had been blown up by the Allies. It was very difficult to get supplies from one area to another. In Japan, sacrifice was a big deal. Kamikaze was really emphasized toward the end of the war, and there was a push in nationalism within the country. People had to be willing to give their lives for the greater good of the nation. Women were asked not to fight in the war. I quote, "We are able to do our duties only because we have wives and mothers at home." That's honorable. However, that doesn't mean that the women weren't involved. They were sometimes put in charge of crops and farms occasionally, but most of the time the government just got Chinese and Korean men to work for them. Also, because Japan was busy bombing people, they were worried that others would try and bomb innocent civilians, forcing them to surrender. So they had to keep their defense up. In an almost ironic twist of events, that's exactly what happened to them. At the end of the war, the United States of America dropped 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing thousands. And that was just a few things about World War II that were cool. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. And it's late like it was last time. It's not as late as it was last time, but still pretty late. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and I want to thank you for that. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.